Hello there. My name is Matthew Nowak, and today I'll be talking about late 19th and early 20th century anarchist Lucy Parsons and what she wrote about racial justice and what her views on Black Lives Matter movement would have been. So, as her background on her life, Lucy Gonzalez Parsons was born a slave in either Texas or Virginia in 1851. Sources disagree on where exactly. Uh, by about 1870-ish, she was an anarchist and became active in the labor movement, such as the railroad strike of 1877. Her husband, who was also a labor anarchist, was executed in connection to the Haymarket riots, which are a large labor movement in 1866, which made her more prominent and well known. As such, she became a founding member of the Industrial Workers of the World, which was a major radical labor union in the early 19th, I'm sorry, in the early 20th century. And she caused so many headaches for the wealthy people of Chicago that she was once labeled as more dangerous than 1,000 rioters by the Chicago Police Department. And this is the poster that I've made that I'm going to be using to explore her views on these Black responses to violence by white supremacy. She wrote about a number of things, but she was mostly an anarchist first and foremost. So when she viewed things such as the Carrollton Massacre of 1886, which I'll talk about more in a moment, she explained it as Black people being the victims of economic oppression, that the residual effects of slavery they live on. That quote, the overseer's whip is now fully supplanted by the lash of hunger, and the auction block by the chain gang and the convict cell. And she viewed these things as a continuation of slavery, and that under capitalism now they were still exploited. They were still, if not chattel slaves, and wage slaves. And she felt that the two ways to oppose this was physically committing acts of revenge for these kinds of attacks and violence, but it was also economic liberation, so land reform, strikes, unions, and the things she would have supported. This in mind, I think that she would have supported the Black Lives Matter movement, especially initially. Anarchism is, of course, naturally opposed to state sponsored violence against anyone, especially if it's racially motivated. And some of the more radical acts and demands early on, such as police abolition, would have appealed to her, but ultimately, I think that it would have her support of it would have diminished as it went on. And kind of to talk a little more about that, um, she she would have supported it, I think, but that as it became kind of more closely connected to more mainstream politicians, which she did not like, it would have probably fallen out for her. But to talk more about the Carrollton massacre, this was an instance where a half black, half Native American man tried to take a attempted murder charge against a white man in a small town in Mississippi, and the response of the locals was to essentially ride into town and shoot up the courthouse and kill at least 20 individuals, though likely more. And I think that she chose this example for two reasons, both because these were mostly poor sharecroppers and farmers who were economically and politically disadvantaged, and serve as a good example of what she was talking about with the oppression and exploitation that came after slavery. And it's also an example of where someone tried to do the right thing, so to speak. They tried to do this through the court system, through, laws. And it was a dramatic miscarriage of justice in that sense. So I think that this was worth talking about because it's a less discussed voice in terms of Black response to white supremacist violence. Usually we hear about more peaceful responses like those of Dr. King, or more militant responses are usually framed as Black nationalism. But this gives an example of Black anarchism, where the goal isn't to set up a nation, but it's to it's to transform things. And I think that because of that, she would have found the Black Lives Matter movement a healthy challenge to authority, but not one which would have ultimately overthrown authority and created the social revolution that she wanted. In that spirit, thank you for listening, and I've enjoyed this presentation. Have a good day.